Hey crafty family, it's me, and I'm finally doing another video after not doing one for like a week because I have not been feeling well ever since I had my colonoscopy. Before I had my colonoscopy, my energy level was low, but ever since I had it, for some reason, my energy level has been like really bad. All I do is sleep all the time. And I know that my iron is still down and all that stuff, but I just feel like crap. So that's why there's been a lack of videos over the last week, but so hopefully soon I'll feel better. And I still don't have my results back from the biopsies. What I do know is that there was a mass in my colon that they biopsied. I don't know the results of. There was also several polyps, so I don't know the results of any of that. She took a lot of biopsies, which is good, but I'm a bit nervous, you know. Hopefully I'll get my results tomorrow, which by the time this video comes out, I could have them. Okay, so today I wanted to do a video on the different mediums and what they're good for, because I have gotten a lot of questions, especially recently for some reason, about what's the difference between gesso and gel medium and matte medium and clear gesso and modeling paint. Like, people want to know what the difference is because they say that they see YouTubers using one thing for one thing and they get confused. I'm going to hopefully try to fix this for you. So if you are confused about these type of things, get yourself a pen and paper and make some notes so that you can kind of understand. And it sounds stupid for me to tell you to make notes, but when I first started crafting, well, not when I first started crafting. When I started using things like gessos and all this stuff, it wasn't until like the past 6 or 7, no, probably about 8 years. Well, no. It was about around the time that YouTube started coming out. And people were on YouTube and started putting things, crafting on YouTube, and started putting out what these things were, because I didn't use them. I, for years and years just used glue and paint, and that was like it. I think I knew what gesso was, and maybe I used it once or twice, but I only used it specifically for prepping a canvas. I didn't use it. Now crafters use these things for many other things than what they were meant to be used for originally, which is great, but not even I knew that. So when I first started and I first noticed people using things for other things than what their intention was supposed to be, I wrote down a little chart for myself until I got used to what, and it didn't take long. I might have had the chart for 6 months and then I ditched it because I didn't need it anymore. I kind of got it in my head. So it's best to write things down. This way you can kind of reference back, because you might forget, oh, what did she say that was used for? And this way, yeah, you can come watch my video. I have nothing against that, but it might be easier. Like, I keep a notepad and I keep things written in there that are like technique tips, things that I see that I might forget later. I keep a lot of things written down and I can reference it later. So you can do that too. So let's start with the most simplest thing and the most biggest question I get asked about, and that's gesso. People want to know what gesso is for. Now, this is my homemade gesso. There's recipes for it online. I have a recipe for it. Gesso, typical gesso, why does this stuff have white? Oh, I see why. My cap is starting to rust, and the rust is falling in my gesso. Great. I'm going to have to get a new jar. I guess this was a bad idea to use this one, maybe. I don't know. Anyway. Gesso is, whenever anybody just says gesso, this is what they mean. White gesso. Okay, that's typically what they mean. If they want something else, they're usually going to say black gesso, clear gesso. But if they just say gesso, they mean the white gesso. 99.9% of the time, that's what they mean, is white gesso. White gesso, its original existence, the reason why it was used was to prime a canvas. So if you got a canvas, which is typically white, a lot of times it comes pre-primed, but a lot of times artists like to prime it as well as an extra step. And what priming it does is it puts a layer of binder, and it also has some grit to it because it's got calcium carbonate or marble dust in it, which gives it a little tooth or grit, and it helps the paint stick and be more vibrant on the canvas, and it helps it stick better. It just is, it's all around better for painting. If you're going to paint a portrait, a picture of some sort with acrylics, or even, you know, oil, whatever, better to have a layer of gesso on the canvas. So over time, mixed media, people that did mixed media started gessoing their canvases before they would do mixed media. And then they noticed that when they would gesso, you know, they noticed that gesso, it doesn't dry opaque. It's not like white paint. It's got a binder in it, you know, like a glue kind of base to it. It's got the marble dust in it, which gives it some tooth. It gives it some grit a little bit. And so when you paint with gesso over top of something like that's colored, now with white paint, it would be opaque. Now this might go on semi-opaque, but when that dries, it's going to dry, like I'll show you. Let me dry it. Turn on my thing. Let me dry this real quick and I'll show you. It dries faster, first of all, and look, you could still see through it. It gives almost like a chalky layer over something, which is great because a lot of paints almost don't have as matte of a look as this would have. So this is kind of fun for going over and distressing with white. You can distress your pages or distress your art and kind of dull down. See how much more dulled down that is compared to this. So you can kind of use this in your mixed media, and that's what they discovered. So like for instance as well, like this flower, this flower was made for me and sent to me in Happy Mail. I hope she doesn't mind I'm doing this, but I'm going to take a little gesso and I'm just gonna kind of dry brush it. And that also means when you put very little on your brush and you kind of wipe most of it off, I'm going to dry brush it, which is going to kind of dull down this flower and give it like, it doesn't take the color away. So if you were using white paint, it wouldn't do the same thing. Whoops, and I dropped it. But what it does is it kind of dulls it down and gives it a little bit more of a shabby chic kind of look to it. You can still see the color, but it's a little bit more, you know, muted. So that's why gesso is used in mixed media and different arts. You can also gesso a piece of paper. So if you wanted to use like a piece of watercolor paper and do a mixed media project, which means a lot of gluing and a lot of heavier items on it usually than just paint, you would gesso the page first, and that would help everything kind of stick to it and help the paper not, you know, rip or, you know, things seep through it since it is paper. So that's regular white gesso. And then there's also black gesso, which is basically the same thing as white gesso, except it's black. You would use it in the same way. I don't know if this is shook yet. Let's see if I can get some of this out so I can give you an example. It's not shook all the way, but just to show you. Yeah, it wasn't shook all the way, so it's not giving a very good example, but that's black gesso. Now, you can buy black canvases, and if you were going to use black canvases, you would use black gesso to prime your canvas. So that's black gesso, and you can also use it in your mixed media projects to paint, you know, and do what have you, okay? Then there's clear gesso. There's other colors of gesso too. I actually have a gray gesso as well that you can use. I don't like this cap because it's broken. So then there's clear gesso, which this one may need to be stirred a bit because it's been sitting quite a while. Yep, it certainly does. That's another thing with the homemade gessos. The marble dust that you put in it sits on, you know, after a while it goes to the bottom. So I'm going to stir this for a second. And I'll fast forward it so it doesn't take long on your end. Okay, we're stirred up. Because yeah, the marble dust likes to sit on the bottom. I haven't used this in months, so that's why. Okay, so clear gesso, as opposed to white gesso, it's going to go on kind of white. But watch what happens when you dry it. Cut this part off so it doesn't get confused with the other part. Okay, there we go. This is the part with clear gesso on it. And it looks virtually no different than this part, okay? And what it does is it gives this a little tooth. Hear that? And then there's a difference. That's got some tooth to it. And what that does, clear gesso makes it possible that if you do a mixed media layer and you put a lot of scraps down like this as your background, and you put all different scraps, and you don't want to cover it with white gesso because you want the scraps and all the color to show through, but you still want to be able to draw and doodle and paint over top of it without it kind of seeping through. And you know, a lot of times when you glue scraps down, you're using Mod Podge, and what happens when you use a Mod Podge or you know, that type of glue, it puts like a clear layer over top of it, and you can't write with a pencil over that. You can't take a colored pencil and color with it. So unlike that, if you use clear gesso, a layer of clear gesso over top of it, you can also use clear gesso to put your scraps down with to begin with, without even using Mod Podge. This way you don't have to worry about putting another layer over top because you kind of already did. See, and now I can take my pencil and color on it, whereas if it was Mod Podged, and I wish I had something Mod Podged over here, I don't, you wouldn't be able to do this. You would like get virtually no color from the colored pencil. You can use pens, you can use markers, and it would all still, you know, be fine. So clear gesso can be used for that. And what's nice also about clear gesso is if you have, a lot of people like to do art journaling in a book style. Obviously it's a journal, so you would, you know, you have pages, and sometimes when they finish a page and they use Mod Podge or some sort of sealant over top, when they, you know, close the book, what ends up happening is your pages stick together. If you would seal your pages with clear gesso, you will not have that problem because it does not leave any kind of... Now, if I were to do this with Mod Podge right away like this, even after I dried it, it would still have a kind of stuck together. This does not stick together. You can leave this together really tight and is not going to stick together or even partially stick together. So if you use clear gesso to seal all your pages with, you know, you're better off. So that's another great thing about clear gesso. And I actually have a video on my channel on how to make your own clear gesso at home, because clear gesso is very expensive. It's like the most expensive gesso you can get. And like a small thing like this is like $25, whereas you can make it for like, I don't know, you can make a whole can like this. You can make tons of cans like this for like under $15 because you'd buy the glue and you buy the marble dust, and then all you need is water, and the marble dust is $7 at dickblick.com, and the glue, you can buy a big thing of it at Home Depot for about, I think, $14 or something, and it's a big 1-gallon jug of glue, you know, just PVA, white glue, Elmer's glue. And that's all you need for clear gesso. So you can make over and over again and have lots of these for way, way cheaper than you would for if you bought it in the store. So that's gesso. I hope that explained gesso. You know, you got your clear gesso, you got your white gesso, you got your black gesso. The only one that can be used to seal a page without obviously putting color, applying color to the page, is the clear gesso. And also, you can also use this on your canvases to prime your canvases. Just like if you didn't have black gesso and you had a black canvas and you wanted to prime it, but you obviously didn't want to use white gesso because that would just make white over top of your black canvas, you can use clear gesso because it's still going to dry clear and your canvas is still going to be black. So this is a great, if I was going to tell you to buy any gesso, if you were going to buy a gesso, I'd tell you to buy clear gesso because there's just so many things you could do with it. Unless you really wanted white gesso, which, you know, obviously if you wanted white gesso, you just wanted white gesso for a few projects, you could dump some clear gesso into a little container, add some acrylic paint, and that's white gesso. So I would say buy clear gesso if you were going to buy any at all. Okay, so then there is modeling paste. There are a lot of different types of modeling paste, and it's also considered texture paste, modeling paste. There's all different kinds. Like I have a homemade kind that I made, and this is my homemade kind. I have several different homemade kinds. I just grabbed the first one that was in front of my face, and this is the one that I made with baby powder. You can also You also make modeling paste with the marble dust that you use to make homemade gesso. So when you get that stuff, you can also make your own texture paste, modeling paste. So, you know, modeling paste is a paste that you use to add texture to a project. You can use it through a stencil. You can just use it, you know, with a palette knife, just right onto your surface and kind of create a texture, like as if somebody that uses plaster on a wall does. You know, you create your own texture. Here's another modeling paste that I have, if I can get the lid off. This one here is more of a creamy texture. This one, there's all different types. There's kind that are there's opaque ones, there's clear, there's ones that are a little bit more clear or translucent. There is crackling embossing powders. There are ones with like grit in them, like a sand, to give more texture. There's this one here, which is a white opaque flakes texture gel, and it's got like a weird kind of flake inside of it. I don't know what kind of flake it is, but it's some sort of, so it gives like a weird kind of texture to it. So there's all kinds of different texture pastes out there. So it just depends on what you want to do with it. So that's texture paste or modeling paste, or sometimes it's called embossing powder, or not embossing powder, embossing paste. Yeah. So that's that. Now there's matte fluid medium, or matte medium fluid, or gel medium, or matte medium. They call it all different things. It basically is the same thing. Now this, its original purpose was to be mixed with paint, like acrylic paint. What you would do with it, like it says, I don't know, does it say on the bottle? Yeah, it says mix with Basics acrylic colors, because this is Basics brand, so it's telling you to mix it with Basics paint. Mix with acrylic colors for extra matte finish. Improves the flow of color for blending, as well as increasing transparency. So, like it said, this is matte medium fluid. So if you have a paint that is kind of a little too glossy or semi-glossy, or has any gloss to it at all, you can mix this with it. It'll take the gloss away. It'll make it matte. It'll add, you know, it'll make your paint, you know, of course, the more you add to your paint, the more transparent your paint will become. So when it dries, because this stuff dries clear, so if you add this with your paint, this stuff will still dry clear and just leave your paint behind. So but it'll make it more fluid as well, and easier to put on when you paint. But what people use it for now mostly is for glue. They use it as the new Mod Podge. So, and to me, this is too expensive to use for that. If you buy it in the store, way too expensive to be using for Mod Podge, because this little thing here is like $9, whereas Mod Podge is like $5. So I wouldn't personally say that that was worth it unless you were real picky and you really like this better, because a lot of people do like this better for gluing down their paper. Me, I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm not that picky, but I use this sometimes depending on the situation, but I also use it in my paints as well. So matte mediums or gel matte mediums, or, well, gel matte mediums, hold on. Gel matte mediums means that it's just thicker. This is a thinner, kind of like a Mod Podge consistency, and a gel matte medium is a thicker, kind of heavier body. So it's more thick. You know, it's kind of almost like a texture paste, except it's a lot smoother, and it's thinner than a texture paste, but it's still very thick. But the medium fluid is the kind that you can use as a, you know, mixing with your paint to make it stay like paint. But if you mix the gel kind, it kind of makes the paint thicker. So anyway, there's different things, different kinds of things, but they really, a lot of them mean the same thing. But like I said, I only have this because I got it from that the creative reuse place, so it really didn't cost me anything. I made my donation and I put all the stuff I wanted into a basket. You know, and that's kind of how I got it. So it didn't matter what I put in my basket, really. I still made the same amount of donation. So I picked this up and put it in my basket. So it, you know, doesn't matter. I would never buy it though, because it's too expensive to me when I don't really need it. because you can, if you wanted to use it to make your paint matte, make yourself some clear gesso and you can mix that with your paint and it'll make it matte as well. So really this does the same thing almost as this, except this has more grit in it to use on your canvases and whatnot. So I'd still go with clear gesso. Like I said, clear gesso is, to me, the more winner of things. It's a little bit more versatile. It's probably one of the most versatile mediums I have is the clear gesso. But yeah, so I can't think of anything else right now. But if you have anything else that you use or have heard about and you want me to explain it, let me know. But for right now, I'm going to leave this video at that because I'm very tired still, and I figured this video would be halfway decently short and I wouldn't have to do a very long video. So I hope that helped you in some way. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments down below and I will definitely answer them back. And you can feel free to email me at pinkpoodlecrafts@gmail.com and I will respond to you. I respond to my messages in the comments quicker, only usually, unless I'm not feeling good. Well, actually, email, I kind of both. I kind of both get to them around once a week, I guess. So I guess it doesn't matter, actually. But yeah, if you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments. If any of you have any other things to add to any of what I said, I might have left something out. Feel free to add it in. But yeah, I guess that's it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Make sure you do what you love and love what you do and be nice to everybody. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye. Mwah.